the transition, team and all that's on the table and what they have to consider. And now we understand Green Party candidate Jill Stein has raised millions of dollars and has asked officially for a recount in Wisconsin. And we're hearing today that the Clinton camp will be participating in that recount effort. Mike, what's your reaction to that, and how far you believe this might go?
Well, we just went through one of the most divisive elections in the country's history. And since the election, President-elect Trump has said we've got to bring people together. He met with President Obama. We talked about bringing people together. Now we see the Clinton campaign joining something where their own lawyers have said, we found no evidence of any wrongdoing whatsoever. And yet they're going to raise money, build their lists, put out emails, and sort of continue to divide the country so soon after an election when they don't even believe themselves that a recount would change the outcome. The recount's not going to change the outcome, but this is a sign. I think it's a shame that the Clinton campaign is joining us. Maybe they're worried about losing vote count to the Green Party and they want to be at the table making sure the Green Party doesn't steal their vote. But I think they have a responsibility. After the election, Hillary Clinton said the election's over. We should put it behind us. Let's all move on and accept the results.
Okay, so
and now our
Mustafa,
campaign's saying they're not going to accept the results.
Is this moving toward more healing or more divide?
Well, look, I mean, she's won over 2 million votes across the country. The race in Wisconsin was between 27,252 votes, and her vote count is increasing. I think the Trump campaign does want Hillary Clinton involved because, they've always been gracious about this. She came out right after the election. She was very gracious. She called him. And this is a close election, and it's a divided election. And you want some finality to this. And if that's going to happen, rather than Jill Stein, you do want Hillary Clinton involved.
In Wisconsin, with almost 3 million votes cast, Donald Trump edged Hillary Clinton by less than 28,000. In Pennsylvania, out of almost 6 million votes, his advantage was 60,000. And the count in Michigan still remains too close for CNN to call the race. Okay. But now some political activists say in counties using electronic voting, Hillary Clinton appears to have mysteriously underperformed compared to areas with paper ballots by as much as 7%, according to what they told top Clinton aides in a call urging an official review. They've not released their analysis nor provided proof of hacking, but that margin could have tipped Wisconsin, and if the others went her way too, she would have won. So who's leading the charge?
Our democracy is under attack.
John Boniface is a Democratic activist who ran for office a few years ago.
This is a story of where the Democratic Party needs to be.
He's a big proponent of voting rights, and he tried to get President Bush impeached over the Iraq War.
The United States House of Representatives has a constitutional duty to investigate fully and comprehensively.
But at the University of Michigan, the chief computer scientist behind the discovery of these alleged voting oddities seems to be on a different page. J. Alex Halderman is concerned about the risk of American elections being hacked. He talked about it on C-SPAN before this vote.
A realistic attack on the election is probably going to be homing in on whichever states end up having the closest margins.
But he wants an investigation because he thinks any questions about voting security ought to be addressed. Not because he's convinced it would necessarily change the result, nor prove anyone tried to rig the vote. He's posted online, quote, "Were this year's deviations from pre-election polls the result of a cyber attack? Probably not. I believe the most likely explanation is that the polls were systematically wrong." As for election officials, some certainly went into the balloting pretty confident.
I could set one of these machines in the middle of Red Square in Moscow, and the Russians couldn't hack into it.
Well, it's been more than 2 weeks since the election, and some people still believe Hillary can win. How? Recounts. There's a new push to retally the votes in Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania, following claims that those votes may have been manipulated or even hacked, perhaps, of course, by the Russians. Here now is David Goodfriend. He's an attorney and Democratic strategist in D.C. He also served in Bill Clinton's White House in a very different Democratic Party. But it's great to see you, Dave.
Thanks, Thanks for having me back.
So here's the idea. So a group of folks have done computer modeling on this,
right,
and they've shown that in counties in those 3 states that had paper ballots, Hillary did 7 points better than in the places where there were voting machines. And so there's no evidence there was wrongdoing other than that. And on that basis, they want to recount. Is
Yes,
this valid?
and that margin would be enough to swing, let's say, the state of Wisconsin, where
Right.
she lost by 27,000 votes. But this phenomenon you described would be 30,000 votes. Look, I also read just tonight that Jill Stein, the independent candidate, has actually taken action here to commence a recount. You know, I don't want to be anticlimactic here, but it's a democracy. These are the rules. And in North Carolina right now, there's a Republican governor who is calling for a recount because he's behind. And I think that's all fair. I mean, recounts are part of the system. In fact, Donald Trump himself even said, hey, look, I might call for a recount. I might sue. Of course, he won, and then he's not saying that anymore. But the point is anybody can, in this system, take that action. Now, there's a bigger political question here, I think, which is, do we as a country feel that our electoral process is legitimate? I do think it was a little bit damaging to say constantly the system is rigged, and not have any kind of action come out of that. Well, you know, I believe that where federal courts have found that redistricting by race is unconstitutional, that's rigging, and that depletes people's confidence in the system.
But wait, wasn't
all this stuff is good if we can get it out there and exercise.
Well, I agree with you completely that people have to believe in the system, or
Right.
else the system doesn't work. They can't think it's rigged, or else it falls apart.
Right.
But the left mocked Trump for saying that, and now they seem to believe it, that it's rigged. And what bothers me is there's no actual evidence. I'm for recounts, actually, if there's evidence of wrongdoing, but this is like a 9/11 truther argument. We've never seen this before. It's weird, therefore something must have caused it. A conspiracy must have caused it. There's no evidence that there was rigging that I've seen.
Here's my view. Have the recount all you want. The state of Michigan hasn't even certified its vote yet. Let's not forget about that,
That's right.
This thing will go until the Electoral College votes next month. That's all fine. Again, I think I hate to be anticlimactic here. I just don't think that it's that big a deal. If somebody wants to have a recount, let them do it. It's under state law. It's under federal. These things all work. They're supposed to happen, and they're happening right now. Louisiana, for example, is having a runoff in its Senate race because the race was so close. That's supposed to happen. North Carolina, as I mentioned, the Republican governor is calling for a recount. Let them do it. I mean, these things should be done, and we all should agree that that's how the system works.
Yeah, I mean, I substantively agree. I guess here's the context, though. The Democratic Party just had a 3 Mile Island incident. Okay, it just melted down.
Really
The core overheat. No, I'm not mocking. I'm just, no one anticipated it. It happened. The party is in total disarray. It's splintered into all these various warring factions. Shouldn't Democrats be spending their time thinking about things like, what are we for? What's our program? What unites us other than hating Trump? What are we offering voters? Shouldn't they be doing that?
I absolutely think so. And as I said, Jill Stein is the independent candidate who is taking action for the recount, and I guess that's her right. I, as a Democrat, think that, of course, the party ought to be introspective and reflective and thinking about what is going to work. And frankly, we should pay attention to what happened with Bernie Sanders in this primary and how he was able to connect, especially with young people, and to show that there is enough discontent in the country on both sides of the political aisle that shouldn't we coalesce as a country around certain things? And look, we've heard about it, right? The trade agreements, infrastructure spending. We've heard Bernie Sanders say he would support Donald Trump. Can you believe that?
Yeah, I can believe it.
If we
I
get
can absolutely believe it.
So to me, that is, we're leading into Thanksgiving. Tomorrow we're going to have things, like let's suppose you and I are a couple of cousins having dinner at Thanksgiving tomorrow night, right? We should be able to have this conversation about the areas in which we agree that the country needs to focus on, like infrastructure, like bad trade agreements. Let's do that.
Doesn't it make you sad, though, that when it mattered, Bernie Sanders, who I think has some principles and had a really interesting campaign, transformed into kind of this mindless partisan robot on the road with Hillary Clinton, swallowing all of her nonsense, none of which he really believed, on her behalf, campaigning against Trump? Shouldn't, when it really mattered, Bernie Sanders have said, honestly, I don't like Trump, but there's some things I agree with him on? He didn't say that.
Well, in point of fact, I think he said, I disagree with Hillary on a lot of things, but I like her better than Trump. He said Hillary on her worst day is still better than Trump, in his opinion.
But he was a good little soldier. He wasn't really a revolutionary. He was this timid little house cat, actually.
Oh, come on. Bernie Sanders, a house cat?
Yes, he was, because he ran against the corruption of the Clinton machine, of dynastic politics, of everything that she represented, and yet when she beat him in the rigged primaries, he all of a sudden became one of her most powerful surrogates.
Yeah, well, look, you've got former Republican opponents of Donald Trump coming to kiss his ring. I mean, it's the same thing, right? The party coalesces around their leader.
I don't think anyone would accuse some of them of having principles. I mean, but look, it's different because the whole appeal of Bernie is he's a man of principle. He says what he thinks no matter what you think of it.
I think Bernie Sanders has not had his last day. We're going to hear a lot more from him. And I actually think when you talk about the Democratic Party coalescing and trying to come around something, look for people like Bernie Sanders who says, I am absolutely apoplectic over the fact that we haven't addressed the working class issues of, do I have a high enough wage? Do I have a mortgage I can even afford? Do I have a job? That's good. I think that's all great. I think that's sort of what we would hope for.
So the Bernie Sanders, he's 73, but we're not in the fourth quarter here? I mean,
look, my 18-year-old son voted for the first time in his life and voted for Bernie Sanders. So I think the guy's got a lot of gas left in the tank. And if not him, his followers. I think that's where the energy is in the Democratic Party.
Did you scold your son?
No, I said vote for whoever you want for. This is America.
That's the wrong answer. Vote for your father tells you to vote for. I made that case from day one. David, it's good to see you.
It's great to see you.
I believe in the patriarchy in my house. Not that it works.
The transition, team and all that's on the table and what they have to consider. And now we understand Green Party candidate Jill Stein has raised millions of dollars and has asked officially for a recount in Wisconsin. And we're hearing today that the Clinton camp will be participating in that recount effort. Mike, what's your reaction to that and how far you believe this might go?
Well, we just went through one of the most divisive elections in the country's history. And since the election, President-elect Trump has said we've got to bring people together. He met with President Obama. We talked about bringing people together. Now we see the Clinton campaign joining something where their own lawyers have said, we found no evidence of any wrongdoing whatsoever, and yet they're going to raise money, build their lists, put out emails, and sort of continue to divide the country so soon after an election when they don't even believe themselves that a recount would change the outcome. The recount's not going to change the outcome, but this is a sign. I think it's a shame that the Clinton campaign is joining us. Maybe they're worried about losing vote count to the Green Party and they want to be at the table making sure the Green Party doesn't steal their vote. But I think they have a responsibility. After the election, Hillary Clinton said the election's over. We should put it behind us. Let's all move on and accept the results.
Okay, so
and now our
Mustafa,
campaign's saying they're not going to accept the results.
Is this moving toward more healing or more divide?
Well, look, I mean, she's won over 2 million votes across the country. The race in Wisconsin was between 27,252 votes, and her vote count is increasing. I think the Trump campaign does want Hillary Clinton involved because, they've always been gracious about this. She came out right after the election. She was very gracious. She called him. And this is a close election, and it's a divided election. And you want some, finality to this. And if that's going to happen, rather than Jill Stein, you do want Hillary Clinton involved.